Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Berry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Berry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the Penn State Visitors Edition of our show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Our guest today is the radio play-by-play voice of the Nittany Lions, Steve Jones. Before we hear from Steve, a few of my thoughts to get us going. When Mike Hart went down on Saturday, it was a scary moment. I really believe it had an impact on how the team performed in the first half. I mean, seriously, how could it not have? As Joel Klatt said during the telecast, I don't know how Michigan can focus right now. It had to be hard. So it was a relief to hear as the second half started that Mike had let the team know he was okay and he wanted them to get out there and play ball. I'm not sure if that's what spurred the guys on in the second half, but we sure looked like a different team. On Monday, Mike Hart tweeted that he was back home in Ann Arbor and on the road to recovery, although no timeline was mentioned as to when he would be back with the team. In his place, Fred Jackson will take over as running back coach, a position he held for many years with us. So until Mike gets back, our running backs are in very good hands. At the very least, a game like Saturday tested our mettle. In a long season, you're going to have games when you have to overcome adversity. It happened to us against Nebraska last year, and yes, even in East Lansing. How you bounce back is the important thing. We answered the bell in Bloomington. This Saturday is huge. How good is Penn State? How good are we? I think both teams are good, and they sure look very evenly matched. My guest today says Penn State is a much more balanced team this year, and the defense is very, very good, especially that secondary. He says this might be the most talented group of defensive backs they've had in a very long time. Joining us next is the radio play-by-play voice of Penn State football, Steve Jones. So don't go away. Here with us on our visitors segment today is Penn State radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones. Once again, great to have you back with us, Steve.
Oh, Mike, great pleasure. Great to talk with you again.
We're looking forward to a big one, and it is huge at the Big House Saturday. Penn State rolls in here 5-0 for the second year in a row. Things didn't go so well in the second half of last season after that great start for a variety of reasons. But do you think this is a different kind of Penn State team this year?
Oh, there's no question it is. Different personalities on it. Personality of the team changes. Same thing with Penn State. You know, they get to write their own story compared to what last year's team ended up doing. And, you know, it's a team that can run the football better. It's a team that's a mixture of experience with some young players in there. And so, yeah, I think it's a different team. It's going to be a fun game on Saturday.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with this Penn State offense, which has really been good so far this year. Let's start with that passing game, which it's been solid. And that offense is triggered by sixth-year quarterback Sean Clifford. How would you summarize his play through the first five this year so far, Steve?
He's been smart, and that's something you want out of your quarterback. He gets them in and out of the right spot. He makes good decisions out there. He's done a good job of utilizing his tight ends, especially Brenton Strange, who's had a big year for them to this point. Parker Washington, Mitchell Tinsley have also played well out there. What you would expect from a sixth-year player, a guy that's been around the block, a guy that is going to go into any building and is going to look around and go, okay, fine, you're loud, big deal, loud before, as shown by what he did at the end of the Purdue game when he marched them downfield to win that game on an 8-play, 78-yard drive where they never even had to use a timeout. And that's, the kind of thing you expect from your quarterback. Then he goes into Auburn down there, 87,000 fans and orange out and the whole thing, and he acted like it was another day at the office.
Well, and that's the great thing about having an experienced quarterback. And one of the things when you look at what Sean has done over his career and what he's doing this year, he's one of the best red zone quarterbacks in the Big Ten, isn't he?
Oh, there's no question about that. There's a lot of terrific quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And it's sort of like Aiden O'Connell and Sean and Tanner Morgan are all 60-year guys. And then there's a guy like J.J. McCarthy who's a sophomore. That is the future of this league. So it's a great mixture of youth and guys like McCarthy and experienced guys like O'Connell, Morgan, and Clifford.
Well, the big difference between last year's Penn State team and this year's is that running game, and all you have to say is Nick Singleton. And when you watch that kid, Steve, wow, he has it all. He has vision, speed, power. He looks like the next special Penn State back, doesn't he?
He and Kaytron Allen both, Mike, because Kaytron Allen's another freshman running back that has come in that's a slightly different style than Singleton. But Singleton is without question the home run hitter. He's a guy who can take the ball at the 20, and you think he has a shot at going 80. He's also a guy that's been able to pick up tough yards when they've needed it. Allen is more of a between the tackles guy, but also has great vision. And I really like the way Allen approaches it. And I think the fact that the two of them have just enough contrast in style, I think that's a big plus for the Penn State offense, that they have two young running backs that are really good, use their blockers well. Allen's probably a better pass protector than Singleton. But the bottom line is there's just enough contrast there where you sit back and say, you know what? They can change the game up depending on which guy's in the game.
And they're both getting a lot of carries. I know in the rain game against Northwestern, they both had 20, 21 carries apiece. I got to see that on tape later. And the thing that impressed me as much as watching those two young guys run was that offensive line. They look really good.
Yeah, they ran 35 first down plays in the game. Like this is the only part of the game where I felt the conditions played a role in the game. And Penn State had 35 first down plays, 29 were runs. They only threw the ball 6 times on first down, and they were 4 of 6 throwing on first down. But they decided that they would rely on that offensive line. Olu Fashanu has become a major league left tackle in a hurry. Juice Scruggs is a big-time center prospect. Then you add in the tight ends, and this is where Brenton Strange has really helped them out. Strange has been the kind of guy that's been really good in the pass game, but he's become a much better blocker. And that tight end H-back type of player has to be a versatile all-around player, and that's what Strange has become.
The defensive side of the ball for the Nittany Lions, I've been very impressed watching that too. Manny Diaz in his first year as a defensive coordinator, has he made a lot of changes to this year's defensive scheme, Steve?
It's attack, and by the way, when you're done attacking, attack again. They want to get as many turnovers and takeaways as possible. Interesting, against Purdue, they couldn't really generate. They got one takeaway in the Purdue game. You're like, okay. Since then, they've been getting takeaways left and right. They've had 11 in the last 3 games. And that's because they've been able to go after the football, make plays. Now, the front guys have put pressure on, which has helped the secondary. But I thought last year's secondary was the best I had seen at Penn State in at least, 25, 30 years. All right. This one might be better, Mike. And that's why they're running, at times early in the season, they were running 7 defensive backs and packages. Now they're running 6 defensive backs and packages. And part of part of it is that when you sit down and look at who are your best 11 defensive players, 6 of them might be defensive backs. That's why in certain packages they're all out there together.
And you were talking about the takeaways so far this year, but one of the stats that secondary has generated is sort of mind-boggling. Through the first 5 games, they've had 51 pass breakups in just 5 games. That's incredible.
That really is incredible. And Joey Porter Jr., outstanding. He had 6 in the opener against Purdue alone. It's great to have a guy like that you're hoping on a game-in and game-out basis that he's your lockdown guy. So that does then put a lot of pressure on the opposite side, on Caitlyn King and Johnny Dixon. Johnny Dixon's in his second year in the program, transferred in from South Carolina. He's played really well. Now, Caitlyn King's from Detroit, from Cass Tech. He and his twin brother, Kobe, who's going to play a lot at middle linebacker. Caitlyn King has been outstanding. Has a real understanding how to play, understands leverage out there, which is really important at that corner spot. And that's been a plus. They've got a guy off the bench, Zakee Wheatley. Mike, what you're looking for in the defensive back that is, quote, a ball hawker is somebody that sees it and believes it right away. There's no hesitation thinking for a second, okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, now I'm going to go. That guy always ends up a half step behind the play. The guy that sees it goes, yep, that's it. That's Wheatley. And that's why Wheatley is able to make the plays he does. Jair Brown is the all-around player. Jair Brown is outstanding against the run. Jair Brown tied for the nation's lead in interceptions last year with 6. He's got 2 more this year. He plays the pass really well. He's the quarterback back there, Mike. He's the one that gets the coverages all in the right spot. So his versatility and his knowledge has been a big plus for this team.
Well, I've never seen a Penn State team that did not have an outstanding defense. And when I look around at all the athletes they have on the field this year, there are just so many. But the guy that always jumps out to me is P.J. Mustafer. And I know he missed 7 games last year, so he's back and he's healthy. At times can be a one-man wrecking crew, can't he?
True. And it's interesting to talk about the athletes. I mean, think about this, the privilege we're going to have on Saturday to seeing all the athletes on both sides of the field. I mean, Michigan is great athletes. Penn State is great athletes. It's going to be a privilege for all 111,000 to be in there and see that kind of athletic display and then to see who comes out on top. And as for Mustafer, really tough knee injury on the first series against Iowa last year that knocked him out for the rest of the season. Worked really hard in the offseason to get himself back. And the first couple of games, he was okay, Mike. I mean, he was okay. And then in the Auburn game, you started to see the flashes of the old P.J. Mustafer. Then the Central Michigan game, he was even better. And then against Northwestern, that's the old P.J. Mustafer. The last 3 games, he looks like the guy I've watched for 4 years here. Out of the first couple of games, he was there, but he was there. Now you can see where he is because now he's a year removed from the injury. I think he's playing with a lot more confidence because now he has a lot more confidence in the knee. He now knows he can get hit and nothing's going to happen. And I think that makes a big difference. And he's a really smart player. His brother's the starting center for the Bears. And you can just see they've got a lot of football knowledge in that family, and he plays that way.
Well, as good as he is, he has plenty of help around him and in that front 7, Steve. Talk about some of the other contributors in that front 7.
Chop Robinson's a transfer from Maryland who's come in and made a big difference on the edge as a pass rusher. Adisa Isaac's coming off an Achilles injury a year ago, and he got off to a slow start. Well, the last 4 games, Mike, he's really played at a high level. Really the last 3, starting with the Auburn game, he's kicked it into another gear. Akeem Beaman's coming off his best game against Northwestern after a slow start. Curtis Jacobs is a major league 2-way linebacker. Really like him a lot. He's a next-level player. Abdul Carter is a true freshman that will not start, Mike, but he's a guy at number 11 who will get in the game. He'll play a lot. He'll play in second-string packages, as a sub, and they also play in sub packages. And he is going to be, I think, the next great linebacker here at Penn State. Carter will be. Now, he's just a freshman. He's only 5 games in. Technically, he's 4, and Mike, he got the first play that he's in against Purdue. He got a targeting call and knocked him out for the rest of the game. So he's actually only played in 4 games. But I'll tell you, the 4 games he's played in, he's impressed Jack Ham and myself very, very much.
Yeah, he's a good-looking ball player. Well, this week,
Yep.
Steve, big test for both teams. We know that. We have two really good defensive teams, two offenses that love to run the ball, but both can throw it. These are really two evenly matched teams, aren't they?
Well, it's interesting. If you talk to the Penn State fans, oh, Michigan's the best team Penn State's played all year. Absolutely true. Well, at the same time, Penn State's the best team Michigan's played all year.
Yeah.
So that's what makes this a lot of fun. And you're right. There are a lot of similarities between the two. Two terrific coaching staffs. You know, two quarterbacks, one in his sixth year and one that is a rising star that's just fun to watch. Just a lot of talent out there. And it's always fun to see. That's, you know, the old saying, that's why they play the games. Well, guess what? When it's over on Saturday, we'll find out who's better, and that's why you play the game. Because that's why you get excited to be in the profession that we're in. That you get to sit down and broadcast a game where you've got that kind of quality on each side of the field. And, the pendulum will go back and forth over 3.5 hours. The momentum will switch over 3.5 hours, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And at the end, no matter what the result, everybody in the stadium is going to be exhausted by it.
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm still exhausted from last year's game. I mean, that was a humdinger in Happy Valley that was just so close right until the very end. And, you never know what's going to happen on a Saturday, but I think both teams are very disciplined. They've been pretty good with turnovers this year, both teams on both sides of the ball. So I think you might be looking at a game similar to what we saw last year in Happy Valley.
I mean, both teams are disciplined. That's why when Michigan committed the penalties they did against Indiana, that was stunning to me because I think they only had 11 the whole year.
Yeah.
I mean, 11 the entire season, that's a disciplined football team. That's why seeing how what they get 8, 9, like that would be a shock to the system.
Yeah.
I was surprised watching because I watched the other tapes, and Michigan's just precise in how they play and disciplined in how they play. They're smart. So, yeah, you're right. And Penn State plays very much the same way.
Well, Steve, this 3-week stretch for Penn State, they get started on Saturday, really tough. Michigan this week, then Minnesota and Ohio State. Those two games are at home. So, when you look at this Saturday's game, a win on the road at Michigan would, to say the very least, set the stage for two huge games in Happy Valley, wouldn't it?
Well, you look at Michigan. They still have Ohio State to play.
Mm-hmm.
They still got to go out and they've got to play Michigan State in state. I know Michigan State struggled, but it's still a big game. So this is a tone setter for the rest of the season for both teams because both teams have the highest of aspirations. Final
question, before we let you get away, Steve. Coach Franklin, now in his 9th year as a head man there at Penn State, has an outstanding 72-34 record. He's recruited extremely well, just signed that big contract extension. And I know Michigan fans are the same way. They want Big Ten championships, playoff appearances. But when you look at the big picture, he's done a really solid job during his tenure there, hasn't he?
He sure has, Mike, because you have to remember the circumstances he walked in. Bill O'Brien had taken the Houston Texans job, and Penn State had been sanctioned. We can talk about the justification of it at some other point, but had been sanctioned, and he inherited a team that was only allowed to have 63 scholarships. That's all they were allowed to have, 63. So he had to work around that for his first 2 years until he was allowed to finally get back to the 75, 80, 85 scholarship level. And the fact that he was able to work through that, recruit through that, win a Big Ten championship, win three New Year's Six bowl games. I mean, that's he's accomplished quite a lot because he didn't exactly start from the position of I'm the Penn State head football coach. He had to fight from behind with the Penn State football program, and he brought them back.
He absolutely did, and he's bringing his team into the big house on Saturday. And as we've said here in the last few minutes, it is a tone setter, a tipping point game. And everyone in the nation will be watching it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Here with us today on our visitors edition of the show has been Penn State radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones. Steve, we always thank you for being so generous with your time, and we look forward to that next visit.
Mike, it's great being with you. It always is.
On Quick Hits today, at Jim's Monday presser, no injury updates. There have been some reports that Trente Jones is suffering from a high ankle sprain. That has not been confirmed. If that's all it is, he will still be out for quite a while, but it sure looks serious when it happened on Saturday. Roman Wilson missed last week because of concussion protocol. Nikai Hill-Green also sat out again for the 6th week in a row, as did Eric All. I think it was 2 weeks for Eric. Cade McNamara once again did not make the trip to Bloomington, and there have been no updates on any of those guys. On Thursday's Game Day show, we'll hear from Nick Baumgartner, so tell your friends and family about the show, and make sure you tune in. That does it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!